The episode begins with a ship landing at or above the Arctic Circle, where they come across the remnants of the sphere from first contact, and a Borg drone just inches under the ice. Then a scientist nearly trips over another Borg. I'm expecting the next one to just be sitting out of sight at a picnic table eating a Philly cheesesteak. I am dieting, but resistance is futile. Well, given that people in the future have apparently never seen any version of the thing, the one in the ice is cut out and allowed to thaw along with his buried comrade. In a field lab, the three start looking their new friends over along with some of the debris, but wouldn't you know it, we see those old favorites for a writer in a hurry show up, nanoprobes. Yes, they're repairing the damaged implants and the dead cells, and if you're wondering why, then I'm guessing you didn't know that the Borg can return to life after being killed, which is exactly why dead drones self-destruct. Oops. So yes, the drones eventually come back to life, and they bring with them a whole lot of trouble. And being a project run by the Science Council, it's no surprise that when contact is lost, it's Starfleet that's called in. After all, who else would you expect to handle things happening on Earth with something found on Earth than an organization dedicated to studying everything that is not on Earth? So Admiral Forrest decides to personally check it out along with enough force to deal with that. Specifically, 3 other guys. Luckily, there's no trace of anyone, not even bodies. That's when we finally get around to the Enterprise that, gives the show its name. It's revealed that the Borg used the remains of their sphere to enhance a transport and fly off at warp 3.9 and is headed in the general direction of Enterprise, so they're charged with stopping it. Reed, being no nonsense, takes the data on the Borg down to Phlox to see if he can find signs of a weapon in the components, because they overwhelmed the team despite the fact that, as Reed notes, they were heavily armed. As all science teams should be. I'm here to measure soil toxicity and kick ass, and I'm all out of samples. During the discussion, Phlox talks about the Binars, who at birth have their parietal lobe removed and replaced with a computer component. Well, you can't be in the Federation then. You're no different than the Borg. That is not so. But isn't it true that you crack open an individual's skull, remove a fairly large and perfectly functional part of their brain, and replace it with a mechanical component, and that after this, they no longer function as individuals? How is that any different from the Borg? We only do it to helpless babies. Damn, I'm torn between my hatred for the Borg and my hatred of children. Enterprise is on the trail and rescues a freighter being attacked by the Borg, but because those people are in trouble, they're forced to allow the Borg to escape. As if that's not bad enough, when the crew are brought over to be treated, we see they're already in the midst of changing into the Borg. But Phlox insists that the decon chamber isn't necessary, that they're absolutely no threat. Remember this the next time Phlox insists he's such an expert on predicting the future. After this, Archer calls to Paulin to show her a speech that Cochrane gave at Princeton, where he decided to talk about the events of First Contact because, hey, why the hell not? If you invented warp drive and contacted the Vulcans to usher in a new age, it certainly makes you sound more credible if you add that you did it all while evading time-traveling space cyborgs. Archer wonders aloud if the Borg are those aliens, and T'Pol counters with the rather more plausible fact that Cochrane was also a drunk and a liar. Things go bad with the rescued people when Phlox gets injected with nanoprobes to begin turning into a drone. Not to worry, you know he's going to come up with a way to prevent his transformation. Why, you may ask, would the Federation never make use of this remarkable discovery? Simple. If the Valakians have taught us anything, coming up with cures and not giving them to people who need them is Phlox's entire approach to medicine. And that's how we can preserve continuity. The fact he's an awful person. As for the newly created drones, Reed and company have tracked the Borg to where they're modifying Enterprise. Apparently because she has a replicator up her sleeve. Things get worse because Reed decides to go with a warning shot, which is like cornering the bad guys and saying, okay, I'm serious here. That's why I'm dropping my gun down this storm drain. Archer finally decides to cut their losses and just vents the drones into space. They still have another ship with Borg on it to deal with, remember? When they finally catch up to it, the Borg send a transmission that switches on all the Borg crap on Enterprise and leaves Tucker standing clueless. Well, more so than usual. So Archer and Reed decide, since they can't use weapons against the Borg, they'll beam over and deal with them directly. Unlike in previous encounters, the Borg realize 2 people running around their ship is a danger and move to assimilate them, but Reed's modified phase pistols are enough to kill several of them before adaptation occurs. One lone drone grabs Reed, but in a clear example of the hero's death battle exemption, instead of injecting him with the tubules, he decides to ask him where the stolen Death Star plans are. Archer disables the drone by yanking out one of the tubes, just like Picard did in Descent. Yep, guy can survive getting blown up, crashing to Earth, and being frozen for hundreds of years, so long as none of that stuff touches the tubes, man. So, Reed solves the problem the way Reed works best. You, think you got enough there? Just a few crates more, sir. With their ship blown up, the day is saved, but before they die, the Borg get out a signal that in 200 years may alert those in the Delta Quadrant of the location of Earth. Of course, being such a serious threat, no one bothers archiving this info, so humanity might be ready for it. Nope, they choose to ignore making a battleship in favor of making a ship that's more like your mall. Regeneration is obvious fan wank, but given the company that it had in Season 2, we can overlook that. It manages to work all right with their one and only shot with the Borg. Personally, I think this could have been their shining moment. They could have made this a 2-hour special and had someone like Data or 7 of 9 make an appearance, such as by reporting to the Temporal Investigation people about the First Contact event. This was good for Enterprise, but it could have been great. The implication of Phlox's weakened assimilation actually helps somewhat ground the Borg. It makes sense that, in the same way that a snake cannot keep biting and giving the same amount of venom, that the number of nanoprobes may take quite a while to get back up to a normal concentration, so that an injection that normally would be done in minutes might take hours or even days. Star Trek isn't supposed to be magical horror, after all. It's not like zombies where 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and so on, until you have a plague of the undead. It's drones capturing and changing people using materials which are finite and must be replenished. It's only the part where they can suddenly summon entire components literally out of thin air in seconds that this falls apart, but I like to think that it's the thought that counts. Still, the episode made good use of what it had. It also avoided the common problem Enterprise had in its early seasons of making their characters act like unrelatable jerks, which I realize is damning with faint praise, but the point is that it showed the potential that was here that would be more clear later on, despite these early episodes that were frankly embarrassing. This episode also showed Enterprise moving away from the wallpaper music that had been demanded for some time. The soundtrack here really helped to escalate the tension, providing solid atmosphere to help sell the menace that the crew was facing. Awards time. Days of Future Past. The entire plot exists thanks to time travel. Bowling ball to the head. The universe gets amnesia, so none of the consequences of this episode will ever be known. Clark's Law Corollary. That is, any sufficiently advanced technology, done improperly, is indistinguishable from an ass pull. And finally, never enough bombs. That's our show. Next time, rocks fall, everyone dies. Happy ending all around.